Millions of people have lost weight with personalized plans from Noom. Like Evan, who can't stand salads and still lost 50 pounds.
Salads generally for most people are the easy button, right? For me, that wasn't an option. I never really was a salad guy. That's just not who I am. But Noom worked for me.
Get your personalized plan today at Noom.com. Real Noom user compensated to provide their story. In 4 weeks, the typical Noom user can expect to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week. Individual results may vary.
We all belong outside. We're drawn to nature. Whether it's the recorded sounds of the ocean we doze off to, or the succulents that adorn our homes, nature makes all of our lives, well, better. Despite all this, we often go about our busy lives removed from it. But the outdoors is closer than we realize. With All Trails, you can discover trails nearby and explore confidently. With offline maps and on-trail navigation, download the free app today and make the most of your summer with All Trails.
Hello, you are listening to Just Films and That. This is the podcast where we talk about those films we think deserve a little bit more love. Whether they're underrated or underseen, we're gonna talk about them. So, let's see what it is this week. Hello, yes, thanks for listening. As I said, this is Just Films and That, and we're going to talk about a film we think deserves a bit more love. I'm Josh Hallam.
I'm Jamie Allen.
And this week we're discussing Paths of Glory from 1957. So spoiler warnings if you haven't seen it, although I would argue you've had a little bit of time to get it seen. Before we get into it, if you could head on over to whatever app or site you're listening to this on and give us a 5-star review and rating, it'd be massively appreciated, as it does help other people find us and hear our thoughts on this week's film and all the other films that we do. We're on Patreon as well, so if you do fancy supporting us in any way, then get an extra bit of content, then click the link in the show notes where you can get ad-free extended episodes with early access to them from £1 a month. So this week then, Paths of Glory. So every now and then, Jamie, because we won't have done this since you joined us, we do a listener's suggestion,
which I'm livid about, obviously.
Yeah, you're annoyed. Yeah, because it meant I didn't have to choose anything.
They're not the co-host, are they?
Yeah. But so a listener's got in touch and suggested Paths of Glory, which I'll go into now. And I should say as well, so Paths of Glory, if you don't know, it's an anti-war film from the 50s set in World War One, and it's all around sort of perceptions of cowardice and how that affects people and things like toxic masculinity as well. So obviously it's quite heavy, so a little bit of trigger warning here if you're not really in the mood for something a little bit heavier. It's certainly not Congo, but should we say that? So this is from our listener Kris. He got in touch, Chris Davis. He got in touch to say, I'm a stand-up comedian from Bridgend in South Wales. I'm a film fanatic to the point that all my knowledge and vocabulary from a very young age have come from watching films, which may explain some of my difficulties. I think we've got a kindred spirit here, Jamie. I chose this film because I'm very interested in the subject of war, and I think World War One is such a difficult thing to make a film out of, notably things like All Quiet on the Western Front and 1917. This film being black and white and of an era that was more into celebrating war really goes against the grain. It's poignant and doesn't lead anybody by the hand in the message it's trying to convey. I think it's still relevant today with the current climate of conflict we find ourselves in. I know it didn't go down well in Cannes because the French felt it made them out to be cowards, but I think through today's eyes it shows the hopelessness of war and the lack of value for life in those that wage it. Runtime is short too, so it's like a quick gut punch and then it's over. Thanks so much for choosing it. I love the pod and it's helped me through many a long journey on the way to a gig and back again. So this was in the listen suggestions pile. The reason I chose it is because I thought Kris made a really interesting argument there about how much he likes it, and also we've never, from what I can think, obviously we've done quite a few episodes now, I don't think we've done a Kubrick film because obviously not many Stanley Kubrick films fall into the premise of underrated or underseen, because pretty much everything he's done is considered to be one of the best films of all time. So I thought that would be interesting. In terms of underrated or underseen, I would probably say, I mean, Kris there's just talking about how much he loves it, which is fair enough. I think it's probably, we're probably going into this, I would say it as underseen rather than underrated, in terms of I'm not sure people are going back to this. Had you seen this one before, Jamie?
Do you know what? I'm ashamed to say I'd never even heard of it. And
No.
I'm kind of up there with Kubrick, but I never really went on that huge fandom of Kubrick. So
Because you hate films.
Yeah, I hate films. I've not seen Barry Lyndon or...
No, I haven't seen Barry Lyndon. I'm the same as you. So
I've seen The Killing, but we had to study that at uni, so it was like a homework film.
Did he do that before this?
I think The Killing might have been before. The Killing might be his first one. But this one, I'm thanks to Kris for kind of putting this in front of us. I won't hide the fact that I really, really enjoyed this.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Let's get into it all then. So we both said there we enjoyed it. So what did you enjoy? What did you like about it?
I mean, 1957, but this feels like it was made in the 70s. Like, it looks amazing. There's nuance to characters. No emotion bombs, I don't think, which, I love an emotion bomb.
The whole thing is a bit of an emotion bomb, really.
It's more an injustice bomb than that. Like,
I don't know about you. I was angry.
Yeah.
I was angry. Well, I don't mean angry like it was rubbish. I mean, the film was trying to make me angry, and it made me very angry.
Yeah, and it does it so well because it's got Americans and British people kind of performing these roles, and it's like you can tell that Kubrick's going, this is France, but it's not really France. Like, this happened in France, but these like bureaucrats and higher ups who kind of cover their tracks and send people into awful situations. Like, this is not that far after World War II, where people are coming back and saying, people started talking about war a bit more than in the 50s.
And if you put it into context, I think I'm not even sure when this was released that in this country rationing had finished yet.
Yeah, which would have helped me.
How soon?
Obviously. Yeah. I wouldn't mind a bit of rationing.
Yeah.
Luckily, the way things are going, they're probably bringing that back.
Yeah, I can't wait to grow my own potatoes and all that sort of stuff. But it is very affecting, isn't it?
Yeah, I didn't even know this was Kubrick until I saw it came up, directed by Stanley Kubrick. I was like, oh, we're in for... Because I saw Kirk Douglas war movie, and I had one thing in my mind, and then something else happened. And it was a great critique of war.
It's the opposite. It's the opposite of a war. It is a war film, but it's the opposite of what other war films are. And there's not there's not that many films that are pro-war. A lot of them are just either biographical or telling a particular historical element. But this is doing something very specific that not a lot of other war films have done. And I think I thought it was superb.
Yeah, and I think the war scenes weren't thrilling; they were terrifying, as they should be. There's a lot of World War II movies that are like, yay, look at us doing this, and isn't this great? Look how many Jerrys that we killed. Yay.
Yeah, we're all lads, aren't we? We're all having we've got the camaraderie, but it's like, yeah.
I mean, World War II would have been better if they all had Stag Do t-shirts, probably. Check out Smithy over there.
Oh God! But no, I mean, so from my own point of view, I thought it was harrowing. I thought it was affecting. So this is one that I hadn't seen it. It had been on my watch list because I'd heard people mention it as like in the same way that Kris has, in that it's brilliant and it's not very well seen. I'm not a huge I've not seen everything Kubrick's done. I've seen a lot of the big hitters, but like you, I've not seen Barry Lyndon. I've not seen Eyes Wide Shut.
Do you know what? Eyes Wide Shut is one of the few I haven't seen. I saw Clockwork Orange when I was too young.
Yeah.
And it really messed with me because I was like, oh, so is this our hero? Our hero's doing a horrific sex act. Our hero is the goodie at the end. I didn't really understand that films had themes. For me, it was like, this isn't Stallone punching the Russian man,
Yeah. It's who do you root for? He's got that great thing, Kubrick, which I think he's got in this as well, which is that everyone feels like they're just like 10% more unhinged than real people. It feels like anything in this could blow up at any moment. I don't mean literally. It just feels like at any moment there could be this huge plot twist or huge argument or huge act of violence. Like everything is, it's just about to kick off.
Yeah, Coiled Spring. There's a lot of Coiled Spring.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
And I think Kirk Douglas is amazing in this as well.
Yeah, he is. He's I mean, I think the cast are really good in this, but Kirk Douglas. I mean, the runtime as well. It's an hour and 26 minutes.
That's insane. I mean, we'll get to this.
Something like that.
I mean, I feel like maybe they could have put a bit more in. I
wouldn't have minded, yeah.
I would have liked a bit more with the fellas who are waiting.
Yes,
just to get to know them a bit more. I mean, maybe by not giving you that much information, it's showing that this could have happened to any of them. But especially with war epics, the way they go on for, it's surprising that this is this short, and maybe it's because the budget. I think what he does with the budget is great. I read up a bit on kind of he he paid a farmer for his land and turned it into the trench, and it really shows. Like this does not look like a soundstage at all.
No.
And I'm just wondering, like, what was the reaction back in the day when you had there's a great POV shot of the firing squad, and I was like, this looks beautiful now, and like it makes me think now when the advancements we've had, what would it have done then? And then you've got it opens with that great one shot of Kirk Douglas walking through the trench, and it's Kubrick showing off, going, "Look, we built this trench." So
yeah, but if you built a trench,
yeah,
I'd show it off. No, you're absolutely spot on. It looks amazing. There's a lot of things that you sort of think. It's like there's a lot of things in this you think, how did they do that like 70 years ago? It's like it's incredible what they've done in it. Some real affecting, realistic, like you say, POV shots of war, shots where they're really capturing the violence, but without, shoving it down your throat. Or, I mean, I think this is a PG. I don't think it's particularly rated harshly. I don't think you don't see much blood, but you see plenty of bodies and stuff like that. But the way it's affecting for me was the overall way in which it presents it to you. And it's not necessarily the violence, it's the sort of bureaucracy.
Yeah, and also it's that classic thing of it's the hope that kills you. Where watching it, I was like, they might get off on this. They've explained that Kirk Douglas is a amazing lawyer back home, so they could get off. And then in your head, you're doing a thing of like, well, this is Stanley Kubrick, and he's making a point, so the point won't really stand if they do get off. So, but it was that like, and when Kirk Douglas, informs I can't remember what positions they're in, but like I think he's a general when he says, "Oh, by the way, your boy tried to fire on his own men," and you're like, "Oh, maybe this is that one bit." And if this was a Hollywood movie, that's the bit where they're like getting on the phone, but like, "Stop it."
Yeah.
And it doesn't. It ends the way it has to end. With spoiler for this film, but
3 innocent men who haven't done anything.
Yeah. One of them, like the absurdity of it as well. One of them is on a stretcher.
That's the bit that really made me angry. It was like, so there's a bit where, again, if you haven't seen it, essentially, a general forces Kirk Douglas, I think he's a colonel, into doing something that was never ever going to work. Then when it doesn't work, accuses the whole bunch of soldiers, battalion or whatever you want to call them, of cowardice. So.
They even give you the scene at the start where the general I think they're two generals at the same level.
Yeah, it's a major general and a general. So it's like so if I've got it here. So it's General Moreau, who's the sort of villain of the piece, and his boss is Major General Brulard. Yeah,
so Moreau, he says that's not going to work. This is not going to work. And then the Major General goes, "Well, this could affect your promotion." And,
shame. It's a shame you can't get it to work, sort of thing. Isn't it? It's that power of ambition to corrupt.
Yeah, and then he says, "Now we'll get it done." And then he's so cold when he's telling Kirk Douglas, like, "We'll probably lose like 5% of the men on this, then 10%, then this. So you'll still have half your men to keep the hill."
But yeah, so they so like you said, they basically then do this. They try and do this mission. It doesn't work, so he tries to then basically do all 100 men for cowardice, and eventually they boil it down to 3. Where they have to basically pick 3 unfortunate souls. One of them is picked because he knows something about his own commanding officer. It's like a parable, isn't it? It's like an Aesop's fable or something.
Yeah.
One of them's picked because one of them's random. One of them's picked because he basically knows something about his boss who picks him that would put him in the shit. And the other one is picked because he says he's socially undesirable, which would basically mean it could be anything. It could just be that he's really difficult, but more realistically, it would be that he'd had a mental disability, or could even be something like being gay.
Yeah, or it could be a religion.
It could be anything.
Kind of any kind of background that he is.
That is just basically, you're not one of us. Sort of thing. So they get picked, and they basically, they have a trial, but it's a kangaroo court, and they basically get sentenced to death. In the meantime, going back to when we're talking about the injustice of it all, one of them gets drunk and just tries to start a fight with the other one. In doing so, slips and cracks his head to the point where he's got a fractured skull. And they're basically saying, well, he can't go to the firing squad like this. And they just go, yeah, he can. If he survives the night, just take him on a stretcher, and then they literally prop him up. And I was there like, because that will have happened and worse.
And the bit that got me really angry is they say, when you prop him up, pinch his cheeks to wake him up because...
The general wants to see the shots fired.
And it's so cruel. The idea of taking someone to the firing squad, but make sure they know what's about to happen.
It's abysmal. Like, it's the sort of thing, these war films, there is elements of things like this and Schindler's List where you think, these are the most horrendous acts committed by humanity. You think they should never, ever be forgotten. But they're so hard to watch.
But it's, I mean, not to get too political, but we're constantly at war, and it's why these are important, just to, even if it makes you fractionally think for a moment, even if maybe one politician sees this for a second, because the higher ups think of soldiers in terms of numbers. They are just numbers, and one of them even calls them animals, and Kirk Douglas has to correct them and go, they're not animals, they're men, and they act like men.
But it's even a bit like, so for me, I think that General Moreau is probably up there with the villain in a film I've hated the most. Yeah. Because there's plenty of villains that I hate. There's plenty of villains that they're the villain, but you actually quite like them, that sort of thing. But in this, he's so despicable. This idea that he's so blinded and corrupted by his own ambition. But the way he does things, like you said, they discuss the soldiers as animals. At one point, they're talking about how, the soldiers, once they came under fire, they grouped together. It's like, of course they group together. Yeah. That's the animals bit, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, of course they group together. They're going to die. Like, they're not, this idea of you should just be a man and run at the guns. You've got no chance.
Yeah, and they have, like, some of the stuff that he says, like, he's going along the line and he's seeing all the soldiers, he's saying, thank you for your bravery. And then there's someone who's shell-shocked and he says, there's no such thing as shell-shock.
Yeah, get him out of my sight, basically.
Yeah, he's such a prick, and like one of the worst things he does is after the firing squad, he sits down with Kirk Douglas, knowing that Kirk Douglas cares about them, and he does that. Your men died very well. Yeah,
it's horrendous. The only thing I'll say, and obviously this isn't in a dislike or a like, but at least he gets his just desserts, because I was so pleased at the end when. So essentially, at the beginning, the event that leads it all off is he tries to get a gunner to fire on his own men, doesn't he? Yeah. And that's what leads to him. I can't remember, does it resolve it, or is it just hinted that it'd be under investigation?
No, he just says that it's going to be investigated. And weirdly, I was thinking about putting this as a dislike, but then I thought, no, it makes the film stronger that the actual person who commits the worst crime in it, the one who grenades his own man and then runs away, nothing happens to him. Like, his punishment is that he has to arrange the firing squad. And he has to go face to face with the man that he's, murdered.
That's probably an emotion bomb, is when he says, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God. Like, because he's the only one who says, it never really clears it up with the others, because there's one of them. So the one who's got the cracked skull, he's the bartender from The Shining, isn't he? And he's...
is he?
Yeah, I think it's him. And then there's the guy who's the socially undesirable one, in inverted commas. And then there's him, and he's the only one who he's got a wife and child.
Yeah, and he kind of keeps it together, doesn't he?
Yeah, yeah. And the other ones, he's very emotional. Apparently, that actor was really difficult. The one,
really?
The one who was, so he's swapped out for another actor at one point. So if the one who says he's socially undesirable, he kept pushing. Apparently, and I only read this, I think, on IMDb, he was constantly pushing to be in it more. I think at one point he arranged to be kidnapped, so they would try and get him back. And the scene where the priest visits them, when he's sort of at the priest's feet and crying, it's just another guy. So it's in the shadows, because they were just like, get this guy off the set, because it's just such a nightmare. I mean, he's not good in it, but apparently he was very difficult to work with.
Yeah, I can't imagine Kubrick taking things lightly. He could just be like, right, mate, do one.
Yeah, and Kubrick as well, when he made this, I don't think he was even 30 yet.
No, the confidence of going into this as well. And reading up on it, it looks like Kubrick kind of had carte blanche with what titles do you want to choose.
Yeah, it seems that way, yeah.
I really respect... Apparently, the studio said, film a happy ending where they do stop the thing, and Kirk Douglas was the one who put his foot down and said, absolutely not, we're not having that ending.
Completely against the point of the film.
Yeah.
Like, completely against the point of it.
And this, I know it's kind of getting into the minutiae of filmmaking to talk about the studio, but you have to like this is what United Artists was set up to do. They were like,
Yeah,
we're sick of the studio system. Let's make good films.
Yeah, that's it. So obviously I've gone into some podcasts before, but I'm quite a little bit of a Chaplin fan, and in his autobiography, he goes into that quite a lot about like setting up United Artists with Mary Pickford and Fairbanks and other people as well. So no, it's I mean, just to finish on the likes, it's so well made. You know, the music, the sets, the costume, the lighting. There's no expense spared, and yet it feels like it could have been made for probably 10 times what it was made for. But the overall moral message, it's such an absolute haymaker, hammer blow in terms of like how you feel, in terms of just the injustice of it all, really.
Yeah, I think the tone of it is amazing. And he really rides the line of like, yes, they're French. These are French people, but he doesn't add too much French culture to it so that any country can watch this and it's relatable to your army, how your soldiers are treated.
Okay, so we'll move on then to the dislike section. Is there anything for us in this, Jamie? I can't see there being loads.
Oh, it's dog shit, wasn't it? No, I mean, I said before, is this just me looking for something to fill a dislike section or not?
I've got one note, and I was like, this is just me being in the interest of balance.
Yeah, I could have spent more time with the soldiers who were condemned, and I didn't. Like, maybe I'll be accused of being an idiot. I didn't fully get that final scene where all the soldiers are being mean to the German woman, and she looks terrified, and then they soften when she starts singing.
Yeah,
it kind of felt like out of nowhere. Like we had this narrative, and then it was a kind of Kirk Douglas seeing his men were vulnerable, and it was a positive note that men were being vulnerable. It wasn't like a go get 'em soldiers. But it just seemed odd that that wasn't like a French woman singing, and it starts out that she's like a prisoner.
Yeah, and she's German, and she sings like a lullaby, doesn't she, or something like that, and they all sing along with it. Maybe it's just that message of it affects everybody.
Yeah,
sort of thing. No, I was the same, because that's Kubrick's wife.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, so the lady who sings, and that's the other thing. Because the other thing you could easily say about this is that it's very, very male. But obviously, it's very, very male. It's set in World War I around the soldiers, and they were all male. So that's not really criticism. You can't really say what a film isn't.
Yeah, we could have had to be more in there, though, couldn't we?
Yeah. I'm trying to think for me. No, I think I'd be on board with that sort of thing. Not even that it's bad. It's just, it's one of those films where it's not even bad. That end scene just isn't as strong. Yeah.
I get it kind of, I like that he gives up on the promotion, and he realizes that the best place for him is where he is. And he says to that guy comes out, he's like, it's time to go back to the front line. And he's like, just give him a minute. But yeah, I could, like, if I said anything more in this, it would just be genuinely to fill this section of the podcast.
No, absolutely, yeah. I mean, if you can't be bothered to think of anything,
just, you know what I mean. It's not Congo. I'll give it that. What we did last week.
It's certainly not Congo.
There's my dislike. Get Ernie Hudson in this.
Are you going to put that in every single one, every single week? It's not the film Congo.
Yeah, if you didn't listen to last week, we did Congo.
So it did come under a lot of criticism when it came out. This from, like, as Kris touched on in his intro there, like the French felt it perceived them as cowards. The Germans didn't like to show it because of fears of upsetting the French. And I believe in Franco's Spain, it was actually banned until like the 80s, like until after Franco had died and stuff like that. I'm not too sure why that is, because I'm not really that au fait on that area of politics. The only thing I got was, obviously, like you said, they are French soldiers, but they're portrayed by primarily American and some English actors, which doesn't bother me necessarily, but they did use some American and English slang in places, like they keep saying chow instead of food. But I guess at the same time, they're not speaking French, so if they're speaking American, they would use that slang. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I mean,
it's difficult, isn't it? It's like the whole Death of Stalin thing of using the accents and using your own accent, because how many films have we seen where someone's doing a crap Russian accent?
Yeah, and
or something like that.
Who is the film aimed at? I guess who did Kubrick want to see this film?
Yeah,
probably not the French. You know, it's not. It's using a real thing that happened to probably as an allegory for you know, a warning to other countries.
Yeah, it's quite mad as well that this is pre-Vietnam.
Yeah,
and he's probably made two of the greatest war films ever made, one pre-Vietnam and one post-Vietnam.
Yeah, I know it's mad that these kind of films get banned, but as a media propaganda, anti-war films, like, I guess they don't work because we are constantly at war.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to talking about the critical reception then, and I've got the box office here as well. Critical reception-wise, I don't get the impression that Kris thinks this is underrated, but what would you sort of think of it as? High?
Yeah, I think this must be high. This must be that he's gone through it as underseen, because it's such a well-made film that even a critic who didn't believe in the ideas behind it would go, yeah, this is great.
How would you sort of score it roughly?
Oh, I mean, for me now, a 9. A 9 out of 10.
I'd be the same. Absolutely on. So, at the time of recording, on IMDb, it gets 8.4 out of 10. But then when you head over to Rotten Tomatoes, audience 95, critics 96. So it's high. It's high. That's 91%, or, you know, just over 9 out of 10. So, listen, it's not underrated. It's appropriately rated because those ratings are really high and it deserves those ratings, right? Yeah,
that's fair. And it made me feel stuff, you know.
Yeah. But box office wise, the only thing I could find was Box Office Mojo. And according to this, it made less than $3,000. Now, we don't know if that's accurate, but I would personally say, I'd say it's underseen. I don't think beyond your real film fans and your real completists around things like Kubrick's work, I don't think many people are checking this out. And for me, this is up there with, like you touched on, it's a little bit of a homework film, but for a reason. Do you know what I mean? This is the sort of film that you should probably watch in school or whatever. What would you say?
Yeah, I think this is up there. I checked with my dad. He's obviously he's quite old, and he knows like these 50s. He is older than me.
Your dad's older than you, is he?
And he thought it was a different kind of film. He thought it was like a Robert Mitchum film. And then I started explaining it, and he said, "Oh, it's the courtroom one." And I was like, "That's weird, because it's actually, there's 10 minutes in the courtroom, and
but it's how you remember it, isn't it?"
Yeah, so that's kind of it. It's kind of, people have it in an older generation have it in the back of their mind, but yeah, it is forgotten. It's not. It's not like The Searchers or To Kill a Mockingbird, where you actually know it scene by scene.
That's it, is that? Yeah, like people aren't going back to it in the same way as, like you say, like a Casablanca or like The Searchers or whatever. Okay, there we go then. So that is Paths of Glory, underseen. Hope you're happy with that, Kris. Thanks very much for getting in touch and for listening. Jamie, it is your turn to watch next week. No, it's not. It's your turn to tell us what we're watching next week.
I'm going to watch it as well.
Yeah, you better do. It's quite crucial. What are we talking about next week, mate?
We're talking about Wolf, Jack Nicholson's Wolf.
Jack Nicholson's Wolf. So we've gone animal, anti-war film animal.
Yeah, that's how it's going to be. And then Ernie Hudson after that.
Yeah, more Ernie Hudson films. Okay, brilliant. Well, then in that case, tune in next week when we're going to be talking about Wolf. In the meantime, if you'd like to get in touch with us like Kris has done and suggest a film, filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. We're on the social media as well. Just search for Just Films and That on all the social medias, and you find us. Give us a follow. We're always putting stuff out there. All that remains to be said is thanks very much for listening. It's goodbye from me. See you next week for Wolf. Cheerio.
Oh, I did realise I never plugged my podcast in this, Josh. Can I tell people
to listen to? Of course you can. Jamie, tell people about your podcast.
I've got a podcast called The Best Movie 2, which Josh has been on quite a bit. It's the number 2. It's a funny podcast. We talk about films. So give that a listen. The Best Movie 2. Yes. And it's a goodbye from me.
Goodbye. We'll put links to that in the episode descriptions. Do check it out. It's, if you like films, obviously you probably do because you're listening to this. A little bit different flavour to this, but just as tasty. We'll see you next week. Cheerio.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
If you've ever dreamed of quitting your job to take your side hustle full-time, listen up. This is Nikayla Matthews-Okome, host of Side Hustle Pro, a podcast that helps you build and grow from passion project to profitable business. Every week, you'll hear from guests just like you who wanted to start a business on the side.
If you can't run a side hustle, you can't run a business.
They share real tips.
And so I started connecting with all these people on LinkedIn, and I saw Target Supplier Diversity was having office hours.
Real advice.
Procrastination is the easiest form of resistance.
And the actual strategies they use to turn their side hustle into their main hustle.
Getting back in touch with your tangible cash and sitting down and learning to give your money a job, like it changes something.
Check out Side Hustle Pro every week on your favorite podcast app and YouTube.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.